Hello class, I have been having some technical difficulties, so let's keep our fingers crossed that this video holds out through the full recording, or that I'm getting myself recorded and not having technical difficulties. So yes, welcome back. Today we're looking at abortion, and we're looking at it from two different vantages. Pro-life position and also a pro-choice position. So we'll start out with the pro-life position with Don Marquis. Okay, so the essay we're looking at is titled "Why is Abortion Immoral?" From the Journal of Philosophy, written in 1989 by Don Marquis, who was born in 1935, which means that he's alive today. Okay, and he is an American from the University of Kansas. And so at the opening of the essay, Marquis states that a recent idea about the pro-life position on abortion is made by irrational dogmatists. That, in other words, the position is only then to be identified as a religious dogmatist, or by way of a seriously confused philosophical argument. And so he's going on to clarify his pro-life position, which sets the ground for the case that abortion is immoral and to be likened to basic killing of an innocent being. But how does Marquis set this up? And he initially starts out with the so-called deprivation argument. The so-called deprivation argument is put forth by pro-choice folks like Michael Tooley and Marianne Warren, of whom are decidedly pro-choice. So Marquis outlines that the pro-choice decision rests on grounds whereby the morality of abortion rests on the determination or calling into question whether or not the embryo is in fact a person, right? So then it is morally permissible to take the life of an embryo. That is, if the morality of abortion is determined to be a person to begin with, is where Marquis starts, okay? So, and agrees with an obviously pro-life stance. Marquis offers a sketch of the idea that both pro-choice and anti-abortion pro-life positions actually share a certain symmetry with regard to their divergent conclusions, okay? So, in other words, either direction, either position shares similarities in their primary assumptions as to the nature of the embryo, okay? So, if the nature of the embryo is a person, so the answer then helps to determine the justification for a pro-life or a pro-choice position on abortion. Okay, and so an advocate of a pro-life position will acknowledge that from the moment of conception, the human fetus has distinctively human characteristics, and that the truth of these claims is obvious, number one, and number two, establishing any of these claims is sufficient to show that abortion is akin to murder, okay, number two. Okay, and then interestingly, a pro-choicer begins with similar characteristics, that the negation that embryos slash fetuses are not rational agents and not social beings. Therefore, number one, the truth of these claims is obvious, and number two, establishing any of these claims is sufficient to show that abortion is akin to murder. Okay. And so to you and me, these positions both are asking similar questions. Is it a human baby enough to justify or not justify taking its life? Or, is it a human baby enough to justify it as a human, right, or not? And then, or is it then right to justify taking its life, question mark, right? So as Marquis shows, both positions are up against the conclusion that, for a pro-life position, quote, it is always prima facie seriously wrong to take a human life. Prima facie basically means accepted as correct until proven otherwise. A pro-choice position then is, quote, "It is only seriously prima facie wrong to take the life of a human community." Take life from the human community. Okay, so as Marquis shows, the burden of proof is problematic for both camps. For the pro-lifer has to prove that human cells are not enough to justify their not being taken away, and how human cancer cells are somehow different, right? And the pro-choicer has to prove that the human fetus embryo is not human enough. And likewise, the pro-choicer has to prove that killing newborns, mentally ill, intellectually challenged patients on the ground that they're not rational or not human enough, right? So the pro-choicer has the moral onus to justify what does and does not constitute the psychological characteristics of the fetus that justify taking the life of the fetus, okay? The famous ethicist Joel Feinberg, who we looked at earlier, as quoted by Don Marquis, calls for a pro-life position to be grounded on what he refers to as psychological personhood. These moral attributes primarily include a stake in their own future. And for example, we base the rights on the ground of personhood of the intellectually challenged, grounded on their stake in their own futures, okay? Where it's not rational, it's not a question of whether or not they're rational, and therefore being so-called worthy as a person. So Don Marquis posits that the impasse between the two sides of abortion, the abortion debate, rests on the so-called accidental generalizations, and that the dispute does not touch enough on the essence of the matter. The essence of the matter really seems to rest on the wrongness of killing of human beings, okay? But then, why is killing wrong? Is it because it is brutal? Don Marquis says that given that the brutalization consists of being accustomed to an act that is immoral, yet the brutality does not explain the immorality, okay? It might be said that the loss would be great to those experiencing our absence. Yet, what about the wrongness of killing hermits, or when no one will miss you when you're gone, okay? So Marquis dispels these as not good enough reasons, and so his reason is this, quote, "The loss of one's life deprives one of all the experiences, activities, projects, and enjoyments that would have otherwise constituted one's future. Therefore, killing is wrong because it inflicts one of the greatest possible losses on the victim." Okay, so let's read that one more time. For Marquis, the loss of one's life deprives one of all the experiences, activities, projects, and enjoyments that would have otherwise constituted one's future. Therefore, killing is wrong because it inflicts one of the greatest possible losses on the victim. Unquote. Okay, so yet this does not entail that it's a loss of life in and of itself. That's the problem, right? Rather, that such a loss entails the loss of a future personal life. So Don Marquis suggests that the wrongness of killing another human being doesn't rest in the act of killing itself. Rather, it has to do with really what the killing does to the victim in terms of a natural effect of killing for the victim. The claim is that the loss of a future for the victim is supported by 2 points. 1, the taking away of something, and 2, that the something in this case happens to be a future and that it is hence deprived or taken away from someone. Okay? So that's Don Marquis' position on pro-life stance for abortion, and we'll take it from there. Thank you, class.